A federal judge ruled Monday the National Security Agency's collection of information on telephone communication within the United States is likely unconstitutional. U.S. District Court Judge Richard Leon ruled that the agency is in violation of the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures. Leon also ruled the Justice Department failed to demonstrate the collection of the metadata helped to head off terrorist attacks. The ruling came after activist Larry Klayman filed a lawsuit in June over the program, whose controversial data collection was first unveiled by former government contractor Edward Snowden. The Supreme Court ruled decades ago that an individual's phone records do not belong to the individual themselves, but the phone company because those are stored by a third party, not the customer, thus giving the government access to this kind of data.
Judge Leon says is that the relevance of that ruling, he says that has been eclipsed by technological advances that were inconceivable at the time the Supreme Court made that ruling.
Earlier today, HuffPost Live spoke with Politico's Josh Gerstein about the ruling.
The federal court system did have an effort to weigh in on this several years ago. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court threw it out and said it was simply too speculative, that there wasn't enough evidence that individuals' phone calls were being snooped on. All that changed with Edward Snowden in June with these documents coming out that essentially proved that not just some people, but everybody in the United States was having their phone calls monitored or tracked, at least, by the U.S. government. And that set in motion a series of lawsuits, one of which is the one that achieved this preliminary ruling today that the program appears to be unconstitutional.
That's right. There's no denying it now for the NSA, right? So what really stood out to you about, I know you've been reading through the judge's decision here.
Yeah, what stood out most to me is what Josh just mentioned, right? This was something where people could never get into the courthouse doors until the Snowden leaks, and now people are in the courthouse doors in California, in Idaho, in New York, and in D.C. Now, Judge Leon is a George W. Bush appointee. He was part of the Reagan administration. He's been known as a very solid, conservative-leaning, if not ideologue, then just simply a judge. Now he's had some rulings that have gone against that grain. He helped expedite habeas corpus petitions for several Guantanamo detainees, most notably. But this kind of shocked me when it came out that it was coming from him. Now Josh might have other opinions. I know he pays closer attention to the district court in D.C. What did you think about this coming from Judge Leon?
I was pretty surprised by it. I sat through the hearing, which took place a couple weeks ago in his courtroom on this case. And, the main thing that you'll take note of at any hearing like that is not really what the judge is saying, but what Larry Klayman is saying, because he's such a colorful courtroom performer. They were suggesting the NSA was sending fake text messages to members of his family and all kinds of other things, and that a revolution was upon us and people were going to take up arms in the streets. But as for the judge himself, he didn't seem to think he even maybe had jurisdiction to take the case. He said the issue had been sort of resolved by the FISA court, and he wasn't sure that he really had the authority or the jurisdiction to step in. Even the government, though, said that he had some authority to review whether the program was operating legally with respect to these plaintiffs, Larry Klayman and a few of his clients.
Leon stayed the order to allow for an appeal. The case will be reviewed by a higher court, and it could take as long as 6 months to hear a final ruling.